gonna go in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening and or watching the Teddybears and Tentacles podcast. This is episode number 27. And I have with me today, as every time you watch this beautiful podcast, young, skinny Rick.
Yeah, exceptionally young.
And so you got some different stuff going on today than normal.
Yes.
What you got going on with this helmet?
What helmet?
This hat.
Oh.
Your head extension.
Yeah, no. So this is my sorting hat from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I found it at Barnes & Noble.
What's that symbol on it? Is that
That's the Ravenclaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Glad you could, and you can hear good out of those headphones like
sounds
that?
great. Sounds great. Yeah.
All right. Sweet. Well, we also have today returning on the producer situation. We have Slim Jimson.
Slimothy James.
Yes.
How's it going?
Good.
Glad to have you back. So we brought Jim in today for specifically whenever we did our Valentine's Day episode, we lost a bunch of audio, and it was unfortunate because it was a lot of good conversation surrounding the coronavirus, which we have some more news and some updates.
But we do not have the coronavirus.
Yes, we don't have the coronavirus.
Well,
the
technically
studio.
we wouldn't know if it was the first 10 days.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, is some of the stuff that's changed and some of the stuff that they're finding out. And we're going to retrace and go back to some of that stuff that ended up getting missed in the Valentine's Day episode, because I feel like, especially in light of news that we've gotten today, all that stuff is relevant. If you're somebody that's just kind of paying attention to what the mainstream media is saying about it, you might be missing a little bit of some of the particular stuff that is kind of surrounding this. Is it a pandemic yet?
Yes, it officially reached pandemic status this early this morning by WHO, which is the
Do we
World
wanna
Health
look at the,
Organization, not a popular band from the 70s.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
I mean, they are a popular band from the 70s.
but also,
they're also the World
Yeah.
Do we
Health
want to look at the
Organization.
CDC definition of a pandemic?
yeah,
no?
let's look up the definition of a pandemic, and we're going to try and go through, this is a lot of information that we have. We're going to try and go through it
Don't worry, I can spell.
in orderly fashion so that this thing doesn't take too long. So the definition of a pandemic is a class of disease prevalent over a whole country or the whole world, an outbreak of a pandemic disease. So
This is technically a global pandemic.
yes, so this one would be a global pandemic. And so how many countries are we in so far? Do we know that? How many countries is
It
in?
keeps changing, so you're gonna have to look it up.
Yeah.
When
Look
I
up
went
real
to
quick.
when I went to bed last night, it was 39. But I woke up this morning and heard that they had cases in a couple of other countries. So I'm not exactly sure what the total number is at the moment. It keeps shifting.
Okay. Well, while we're looking this up, I'll go over a few housekeeping type things. Recently, I have watched the Roger Stone documentary that came out a few years ago. And if you haven't seen that, just either he is about to go back to, or maybe he's been sentenced at this point, but he was up for, his verdict more or less. And so I watched that documentary that Netflix put out, and I will say that they did a great job on it. So I would expect an episode about Roger Stone coming up soon. I found kind of some of that stuff to be pretty fascinating. So we'll jump back into the coronavirus stuff. So there is a name for it now. There has been for a couple weeks, and it is COVID-19.
COVID-19 is what everybody's...
COVID-19. Okay. So it's now in 50 countries, and this article on The Economist, title of it is COVID-19 is now in 50 countries and things will get worse. So we're looking at 50 countries now. This is an article that came out today, so I would think that is accurate.
It's doing the money, but we can read the first part.
So it's fine. We're just going to go to the first tab, and we're going to talk about a little bit about how this thing, started. I know that at one point they were speculating that there was a lab in Wuhan that kind of dealt with some of these viruses and such. And we're talking about in Wuhan, China, which is it a city or is it like a province?
I'm pretty sure it's a city.
Okay. So it's a city, and the first kind of theories that came out was that there is some type of lab there that does deal with viral contagions and possibly does some other genetic type work, that this thing could have got released that way. And then shortly after that, we heard that it could have potentially been coming from different, for lack of better words, unclean animals that people were consuming there, such as bats or snakes. But we will go to the second tab. We'll look in and kind of read a little bit about how this whole thing started. So a SARS-like virus, this is on pharmaceuticaltechnology.com. It says a SARS-like virus outbreak originating in Wuhan, China, is spreading into neighboring Asian countries as far afield as Australia, the US, and Europe. How is China and the world responding to the coronavirus outbreak? So scroll down some. Keep going. So many ads and weird stuff. So these are just some bullet points of kind of what's going on right now. Switzerland has announced 3 new cases. Swiss health authorities have announced 3 new cases of coronavirus, taking the country's total to 4. Canada confirms a new case. Ontario province in Canada has reported its first case, bringing the country's total to 12. The woman is said to be in her 60s with a travel history to Iran, along with 2 other family members. The woman is under self-isolation. Australia says pandemic inevitable. As a press conference, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said that the world will soon enter a pandemic phase of the coronavirus. In an effort to be prepared for the prediction, the country implemented its emergency response plan / coronavirus pandemic preparedness plan. Australia also extended China travel ban to the 7th of March. And so...
and Japan has closed all public schools through into April.
Wow.
And Tokyo is supposed to be hosting the 2020 Olympics in June, and that is most likely at minimum going to be postponed now.
Yeah.
You have... I think it was in Iran, all public meeting spaces are closed, coffee shops, stuff like that. They're not allowed to be open right now. You were talking about Wuhan and talking about the animal thing. It's a really interesting article. If I can read a quick section of this real quick. So right now they're not sure which animal. So obviously there's a lot of research going into that. But what they think is, and of course, I do know the theory about this escaping from a lab. That is not the general consensus of WHO, World Health Organization. Again, they think that it did come from an animal jumping over. And the reason for that is because they found evidence of that happening with the Ebola virus and SARS and MERS back in the day. These things happen through what are called wet markets. And wet markets are markets where these wild animals are being traded and sold. So they create, according to the BBC, they create ideal conditions for the spillover of pathogens from one species to another, including people. So the market in Wuhan, which was closed down after the outbreak, had a wild animal section where live and slaughtered species were on sale, including body parts of camels, koalas, and birds. The Guardian reports that an inventory at one shop listed live wolf pups, golden cicadas, scorpions, bamboo rats, squirrels, foxes, civets, I think is how you pronounce that, hedgehogs, porcupines, salamanders, turtles, and crocodiles. Yeah. And these wet markets have been banned from what we're being told the entire the entire nation has banned them. Also, I mentioned SARS and Ebola, but that is also how HIV came into. At least that's the argument is that's how it came into play. But I thought it was really interesting. All of those animals. That's why it's not so simple as like, oh, it probably came from a bat.
Yeah, it's what they call bush meat. So it's these animals that basically live in these dense parts of forests and wooded areas that they're not your typical like a wild boar or something like that. I've heard multiple people refer to it at this point as like bush meat. And so, like you said, there's theories or myths that you've heard. Really, I've heard of my whole life that like AIDS came from someone having sex with a monkey, and stuff like that.
I've heard that one.
Yeah,
I was about to say.
I want to say that it was you that told me this, but haven't they stopped? Or maybe I've just found it myself. Haven't they stopped the? Like you can no longer name something like that off of an animal that is like so you can't do like swine flu or bird flu or anything like that anymore.
Well, they're just not accepting those as official names because they can link to the territory where they were birthed, and they say it promotes racism, and so they want to make sure that they're giving generic names that I guess at some point people won't know where it came from. I mean, it is unfortunate that you have people like, even here in America that are not eating Chinese food because they think somehow they're going to, if I go to the Chinese restaurant down the street, the coronavirus is in there. And that's just, unintelligent. But on the same hand,
you can't blame them for, I mean, I'm sure that most of that food comes from, locally, not local, but it's all chickens from America and stuff like that. But there's still no telling where.
Because chicken doesn't taste the same in other parts of the world. We've talked about that before.
There's no telling where, all these different little sauces and stuff like that, though, could be, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I would go that far, but I don't blame people for doing it. I don't.
Yeah. I'm not, I think it's just unfortunate. Like my daughter said that she has some friends who, they're not wanting to sit next to Asian people at school because they could have it. It's just silly stuff, taking it too far. So, but I think that's just a picture of the world we live in right now.
Yeah. Or a picture of the fact that they're like in middle school.
Yeah. What were you going to say before?
I was going to say, how did HIV hop over if isn't it just sexually transmitted?
No, well, I heard that.
Or like through, if you get blood.
I heard that, I don't remember where I heard it. It was probably on another podcast recently, but I want to say that they had traced it down to someone who was actually hunting monkeys and ate one. And that was supposedly how it started. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that anybody knows that.
I think 100%. Anything that they say, you just have to take with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that it is pretty fascinating watching that show. I was telling you about Pandemic, how well they are able to trace down like patient zeros and stuff like that. They are pretty, because in these densely populated cities and stuff, like some places in India and China and stuff like that, there are these really obscure strains of the flu that break out at different times and stuff. And so, that's what that documentary was them kind of chasing down these really just weird mutations of more common stuff. But they're able to find those patient zeros like, pretty easily. But as far as AIDS go, I mean, there's no telling when it actually started to begin with. So you might be talking about much before, press was even thought of, pretty much.
So how about yesterday morning, I wake up and the news cycle, in a lot of what we're seeing in Europe, Middle East is it's in front of us. So when we wake up in the morning, they're kind of ending their day and we're starting to get some of the like, okay, here's what transpired today. And I was watching that press conference with Iran and their deputy health minister. Did you see this?
Mm-mm.
So he's up here talking about it's not a threat. There's nothing to worry about. And he's like rubbing his face and like wiping his nose. And he's like, I believe that this so much that if I'm wrong, I'll resign. And then like 2 hours later, they announced that he has the coronavirus.
Oh my gosh.
And he was standing up there in the press conference in front of everybody, like just like
sweating,
oozing it out, you know. And it was
shaking people's hands and all that.
So embarrassing to take that stand. But he doubled down, man. I mean, he found out he had it. He got on his phone and did a little like mobile update and was like, "It's nothing. See, look, I'm here and I'm fine." It's like, I don't think you understand what we're talking about. Nobody thought you were going to die, you know? So,
well, we'll keep moving forward. Go ahead to the next tab. So this was one that we talked about the audio before when we talked about the audio that we lost. This is Chen Kishi, I guess you would say his name. So this is he is a Chinese lawyer and an activist that he basically was vlogging about the coronavirus whenever the outbreak first started to happen, because it did seem like China made an attempt to cover it up at first a little bit.
There's no doubt. Nobody is even debating that. What they're saying right now, though, today is they're saying it seems that they understand the gravity of this now and they're being more transparent, but nobody's debating the fact that when this thing kicked off, they were.
Yeah. So
because China.
And so this guy, along with another journalist who was kind of sending videos and stuff outside to people outside of China, both of these guys disappeared about a week into this whole fiasco. And as far as I know, they have not found either of these guys.
Right.
Yeah, we have not heard what happened to him. So we do know that with the fact that this guy is an activist and a journalist and stuff like that, there are some weird extradition laws within China, mainland China specifically, that I would say could easily, something like this could probably easily be seen as a whistleblower kind of situation, and it just wouldn't be surprising if these two guys got picked up by the government or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody would be shocked by that, especially given the kind of the gravity of what we've been seeing in the way that they have been creating a state of total control, you know, telling people what they can and can't do.
Are you recording on the hyperdeck?
Yeah.
It's recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was at 19 minutes if you want to cut that out.
Yeah, I will. I just, it just went into my mind. I didn't press it. And so
I did.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Hang on. I'm going to put it. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I just didn't want us to keep going, you know?
Yeah.
So I will say one of the things that that I found interesting about this situation whenever it first started going down was the kind of the revealing of the Chinese surveillance state on some level. We showed it in one of our other podcasts. Maybe it was even the Valentine's Day episode, the video of the drones that were flying around, and they had the drone pilots, I guess, were talking to people through it and kind of yelling at one another and stuff like that. And so, but one of the thing that is pretty fascinating about it is that their surveillance state also kind of makes it to where they're able to get a hold on this thing at least a little better. So they know that if you went to the bank at this time, they also know everyone else that was at the bank, and it's easier for them to find out who, all of these people have been in contact with that are testing positive for
I think that we might not know that to actually be a fact until we get to the other side of this and we can compare how different countries fared with it, because their outbreak was pretty bad. I was watching the BBC yesterday, and they were talking about that there's a little bit of a misdirect that could be an accident on China's part, but they're reporting that there's a decline in the number of reported cases.
Yeah.
Well, what they did was they changed the way that they diagnosed and the way they reported it. So this was last week. And so they changed it, which meant that then the numbers become skewed. And then this week they went back to the old way of doing it. So you have a week's worth of data in there.
Yeah, that's inaccurate.
That's skewing it all. So when we are being told things like, hey, look, they're in the decline, that actually might not be the case.
Yeah.
We won't actually be able to look at those charts with any real significant understanding for a minute. So it has helped them keep control over their people.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know how you go into lockdown the way you have gone into lockdown and have it continue to grow.
Yeah.
At the rate that it was growing. But maybe that's what we're going to find out when it hits the rest of the world, in different ways, that's the way it works, So
yeah.
I have heard that argument, that their military police state is helping, but I don't know what we compare that against yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely too soon to tell for sure. I mean, it's we'll see with them even having the requiring so many people to wear masks. That was one of the things that was pointed out by those drone pilots. Whenever they were kind of yelling at people over the thing, was they were saying, "Why aren't you wearing your mask?" and all that. I would imagine that if that is something that if they are using their police state, for that, would those masks not disrupt the facial recognition and all that they would probably be using?
Yeah. And the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control both have put out reports in the last 24 hours saying that unless you are wearing a N95 or higher rated mask, that's a rating that's on the 3M masks.
Yeah.
So unless you're wearing that, you're actually not filtering air. So it's a complete waste until you're showing symptoms. All it does is to help keep you from making others sick.
Yeah.
So all the people wearing surgical masks aren't helping themselves at all. Those are just, hey, once you're sick, do this to help slow down the spread when you are around other people. So even with that, there's, they're not going to actually help people.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I was looking at masks and stuff the other day. And that's the same thing that they were talking about. I saw that article by the CDC.
Yeah, and you've got people price gouging like crazy.
Yeah.
Quinn, you were telling me about you found a great deal on eBay.
Yeah. So I found a deal on eBay for a 3M 6200, like a legit reusable with
cartridges.
Cartridges and all that stuff. And so I found it. It was a good price. It was like $15, and then I went to check out.
I think it was $10.95.
Yeah, it was like $10. It was like $5 to ship it.
Oh, okay,
but,
okay.
I found some of the cartridges for it for like $7-8, and I was like, I'll just get this, $25 for a decent mask and stuff like that. Then it said that the cartridges were going to be like 3 to 4 weeks to arrive because they were coming from China. And I was like, no, I'm gonna pass on this one.
Can they put some coronavirus in the box?
Yeah.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
I'll take a side of Lyme disease.
Yeah.
You can't have corona without the Lyme.
Yeah. So we'll keep on moving forward. Let's go to the next tab.
That's me.
Is it frozen?
No.
Oh.
Well, actually, it might be. Nope, there it goes.
Okay, and this was just a article that I pulled up from the CDC itself, just kind of talking about it a little bit. Keep going down. So we can actually click whatever we want here. Go back up. So go ahead to what you should know and hit how it spreads. So current understanding about how the virus that causes coronavirus disease in 2019, COVID-19, spreads is largely based on what is known about similar coronaviruses. Person-to-person spread. The virus is thought to spread mainly from person to person between people who are in close contact with one another about 6 feet through respiratory droplets produced when an affected person coughs or sneezes, and they land on people's nose or mouths and are potentially inhaled. So, the main way that it spreads is through contact, through you touching something that someone else has touched and then rubbing your eyes or rubbing your mouth or something like that.
And that's based on what we understand about coronaviruses. But have you heard them using the word the novel coronavirus?
Mm-mm.
So you'll find that if you actually are looking at some of the actual I guess things that have the actual scientific name in there, they'll be using the word novel coronavirus. And that word novel means that, and this is probably not the most scientific way to explain this, but it basically boils down to the fact that there are other forms of transmission that might be a lot simpler, and we just don't know about them. So best practices, washing your hands, these things, but they're also saying they don't know based on current information that it doesn't even have other ways of transmission that they haven't been able to identify. So they call it a novel coronavirus right now. And
it's still a rapidly mutating virus. So, there's always the potential that we haven't seen the last of what it's going to look like, at the end of it, how it'll affect people and symptoms and all that.
Right, because it is... So I was watching a breakdown on this. So when a virus like this replicates, it replicates through DNA replication and RNA replication, and the DNA replication is based on, again, the way this was being explained, is an exact copy. But RNA replication is actually not an exact copy. Yeah. So the concern is always what happens in RNA replication. And, we talked a little bit about the article that shows that in the current RNA reproductions, there was basically it was like it had a gravity pulling it towards Asian population. Yep. But that RNA reproduction changes. And one guy was explaining it this way. He said, imagine that you have a coat and you want to make a copy of that coat, right? So if it's a denim jacket, so you take it and you make a copy of it, so you get more denim and you make a copy, you get more denim and make a copy. That's DNA. Yeah. But RNA would be like, okay, let me get some wool and now let me make a copy of it. And so it changes enough to where it doesn't have the same impact that it had. It's a slightly different. That's kind of the concern on replication right now.
Yeah. So we'll keep going a little bit. How efficiently does the virus spread? How easily a virus spreads from person to person can vary. Some viruses are highly contagious, like measles, while other viruses are less so. Another factor, whether spread continues over multiple generations of people if spread is sustained. The virus that causes COVID-19 seems to be spreading easily and sustainably in Hubei province and other parts of China. In the United States, spread from person to person has occurred only among a few close contacts and has not spread any further to date. So we had at one point, shortly after this whole thing started, we had, I believe, was it 3 cruise ships that were quarantined?
I'm not sure on the exact number. There was one big one, one that had the big outbreak, and that was the
Queen something,
the Princess,
something like that,
and it was in Japan, It was at port in Japan, and it actually had a number of people that got sick with it.
And I do remember seeing a interview with 2 Americans that were on one of those ships. And I want to say they only had 2 deaths on it, I believe.
That is the number that I had heard. The Diamond Princess, that was it.
Yeah. So we had that happen going on kind of all at the same time. Keep on going. Go to the next tab for me. And so this is kind of a little bit talking about what came to light today. So today I have not got to dig real deep into this whole scenario in itself, but Jim came in today and told me that there were multiple cases in which now the virus, people who had been tested positive for the virus and then had tested negative after no longer having symptoms, sent back into the workforce, got sick again and tested positive afterwards. So the virus has, we don't know really if it has always, but this current mutation of it seems to be able to affect people more than once, which is pretty frightening in itself.
Correct. They don't know if the doctors from the CDC that I was listening to said that what they don't know is does it just is it a 2-phase virus? So there are evidently certain viruses in the world that they actually have like a multi-phase process to them. They're not super common. Is that what we're dealing with? Or do we have something that can actually can lay dormant and then just resurface? If you think about it in the terms of like, if you get chicken pox, you always have it. It's always in your blood, and it doesn't show back up as chicken pox. It shows up as, I forget what it's called, but it'll show back up as like a rash later in life for some people when their immune system gets weak enough. So what we don't know is what was the condition of these people's immune systems? Were they immune deficient? It's really literally this is just being reported today. But
do we know if they're showing symptoms again, or are they just going back for like checkup?
Yeah, my understanding is that the ones in China, I don't think there's a lot of information on, but the one that we do have access to in Japan is showing symptoms. I mean, they're in full relapse. So
yeah, so this is what this is talking about here. There has been a case reported in Japan where a woman has been confirmed as a coronavirus case for a second time after previously recovering from the illness. Professor Mark Harris, professor at Virology, University of Leeds, said the report that patients who tested negatively subsequently tested positive again is clearly of concern. It's unlikely they would have been reinfected, having cleared the virus, as they would most likely have mounted an immune response to the virus that would prevent such an infection. The other possibility, therefore, is that they did not, in fact, clear the infection but remain persistently infected. Although coronavirus generally cause short-term self-limiting infections, which are cleared coronaviruses, mainly in bats. Clearly, we need more information about these patients, and it just goes on for them to kind of close their statement out. But so there's that lady in Japan, and then I wanted to click over to go 2 over.
Okay.
Okay, we took a quick break there, and we are now back. So this is on what we're about to read is on CNN Politics. Last week we did an episode on basically the media and the 2020 elections. And so I found this around that time, and that is that 3 arrests were made. And at the time, it was speculated that these did have some kind of connection to the virus or some form of selling or transporting genetic material from, I think, a professor in Harvard, as well as 2 other guys that had been receiving money from China. Did you hear anything about that?
Yeah.
So let's go. We'll go right here. So a Harvard University professor and 2 other Chinese nationals were federally indicted on 3 separate cases for allegedly lying to the U.S. about their involvement in China's government, the U.S. Attorney for District of Massachusetts announced Tuesday. Federal authorities told reporters the cases highlighted the ongoing threat posed by China using non-traditional collectors like academics and researchers to steal American research and technology. Dr. Charles Lieber, 60, who is the chair of Harvard's Chemistry and Chemical Biology Department, is accused of lying about working with several Chinese organizations where he collected hundreds of thousands of dollars from Chinese entities. U.S. Attorney Andrew Leiling said at a news conference. So, from what I understand, this guy, as well as another guy that were professors at Harvard, were working in like genetics labs and were given a lot of money by the Chinese government. One of these guys, whose name is George Church, is also one of the people that was receiving large amounts of money from Jeffrey Epstein for scientific endeavors or whatnot. And so at the time, basically it was said that these guys were transporting some kind of genetic material out of one of Harvard's labs into, and had been bringing it into Wuhan for some time. So go to the right one. So this is on Snopes. Was Charles Lieber arrested for connections to coronavirus Wuhan lab? So scroll down, and it says mixture. So what's true? Professor Charles Lieber was arrested in January 2020 for misleading federal authorities about funds he allegedly received from Wuhan University of Technology and his connections to the Chinese government-sponsored recruitment program. The conspiracy theory that the new coronavirus as a bioweapon developed in a lab is unfounded and has been dismissed by several leading researchers. Lieber has no known connections to the 2020 outbreak of the coronavirus. But this was something that was flying around, especially the circles that I spend a lot of time in. So I thought that it was kind of worth bringing up. I guess, technically there's no telling what these guys were doing, at all. But the fact that...
Well, yeah, I mean, I would probably lean to the fact that it's been conspiracized, and probably doesn't lean that way, but not because of Snopes, because I think Snopes is a joke. They are very biased in how they respond to things. So
yeah, for sure, they definitely are.
But on the same hand, here's my only thing: that they did not have to make these indictments public.
Yeah,
and if the government wanted to keep it a secret, they wouldn't have made that part public.
Yeah.
Now, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
If they were like, oh, well, we just indicted him on this, he had nothing to do with the coronavirus. I don't know. That starts making a jump for me. Yeah. But
it's still
on the same hand, we've seen crazier stuff. So
yeah, definitely whenever it comes to mainstream media itself, I mean, it also wouldn't be too far out of their scope of things to do to, present something that they wouldn't have to present, so that some theories like that would start to pop up and kind of devalue some of the other information that surrounds these type of things.
He has over 400 published papers in peer-reviewed journals.
So he's pretty well known in the academic.
He's the principal inventor of more than 50 patents.
Wow.
So this is this is a smart guy.
Yeah, for sure. But
maybe smart enough to make a virus.
Nonetheless, he's receiving large amounts of money for China and working with their recruitment programs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is the biggest issue that we have with them is, more or less, or really that a lot of the world does have issues is that there's so much intellectual theft that
his primary focus is between how to has been integrating electronics with biology.
Yeah.
So these things that you see, these implants that they put in that allow you to control something using the energy from your brain. That's his primary focus.
Okay.
So I was just reading his actual Harvard bio page. It's pretty pretty accomplished guy here. He screwed this junk up.
What does that look like whenever you sell intellectual property to another nation like that? Is that considered like treason? Is it?
No, I think treason is when it has to do with
military confidentiality.
Government secrets. So like if he was working on a government project and did that, now if that's one of the things they bust him on, that would be a thing of treason, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. But if it is stuff that is like for instance, he has started, it says in here, 2 companies that work on nanotechnology. Mm-hmm. One is called NanoSys and the other is called Vista Therapeutics. So if he files U.S. patents, but then is also selling those things overseas, he could be, I would think he would be in violation of various like patent laws and, I mean, I think it all depends on exactly what all the pieces are that break down for him. Yeah, there's nothing against the law from working with China. It's just the manner in which you do it and what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to bring it up because it was something that was buzzing around, my ears whenever it first kind of happened. So go to the next tab. And so this is the Trump-Pence administration kind of response that I found to it earlier. Did you see Pence's speech that he gave?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing last night.
Yeah. So President Trump named Vice President Mike Pence his point person to coordinate the government's response to the coronavirus, expressing confidence that the United States would prevent a widespread domestic outbreak.
That's not what he said, though.
What'd he say?
This is the problem. I was reading the news today, and they have turned this into, this had me upset. This is politics right here. Mm-hmm. First of all, how does Trump talk? Trump talks with, it's big, it's huge. I mean, it's great even, right? Yeah. We all know that. Yeah. So it's not like he got up yesterday to speak and all of a sudden was speaking some different language. Yeah. So he got up and said, we've done a great job so far. It's even probably been the best in the whole world. I would say that we should be proud of what we've done and how we've done it. And they're like trying to come in and be like, look, he's saying we're invincible. He didn't say that at all. And he constantly pointed back to the CDC guys behind him and saying they're the smartest. They're the ones that we're leaning on. And he let 3 different top people speak. Was very kind and lifted them up, and they all 3 said that we don't know what we don't know, that we need to be prepared. The Center for Disease Control put out this like statement the day before that said, it's not a matter of if, but when. Yeah. And that statement was specifically not a coronavirus outbreak, as the media has kind of been pushing. It actually was, it's not a matter of if, but when we might see individuals with with some bad cases, meaning that there's no way to stop potentially somebody from dying. So what Trump said over and over and over in this thing was, it could be nothing. We could be on the worst of it now, or it could get worse. Yeah. And all that they're showing clips of are him going, it could be nothing. and they're not going to the second half of it. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to sit here.
It's normal Trump coverage.
I'm not trying at all to defend him.
Yeah.
I mean, he definitely talks in this very, in my opinion, like anybody who grew up in New York, anybody who from there who talks like that, it's very New York. But man, it was so frustrating this morning seeing, instead of covering like data that and information to help us, they're just sitting here like, trying to slam him, and then saying that Pence has been put in charge of this thing. And he said it over and over. They asked him yesterday, why are you putting Pence in charge? He's like, I'm not putting Mike Pence in charge of anything. He said, the guy who's in charge has a lot going on besides the coronavirus. I have a lot going on. So what we both needed was somebody that could be available to help pass communication. Mike Pence has lots of experience with that. So we're making him and they did good here. I was proud to hear that, point person, just the point person. That's all that he is. If I need to be in a meeting, I'll be in a meeting. And then the head of the CDC will be in meetings that he needs to be in. Yeah. But that's it. Yeah. And then it was like, so you're making, one person said, you're making Mike Pence the czar. And he was like, I'm not making Mike Pence a czar over anything. Yeah. Like, anyway, sorry. I was telling my wife last night and this morning, I was like, of all the times we're sitting here talking about how to prevent deaths, and this is what our media wants to focus on, is trying to shame Trump. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's all that they're focused on in general. Like I said, we talked about that,
more evident to me than ever before with these news stories today. I was watching Rachel Maddow on MSNBC this morning, and I mean, she's not even reporting facts. She's just literally commentating on the only word she heard that she liked. And I'm sitting here going, like, that's not even what they said. And I guess the other side of it is, like, I'm sitting here reading like reviews underneath. They're like, thanks for informing us. Thanks for letting us know. And I'm like, people, there's a link to the 20-minute, take 20 minutes and go hear what the Center for Disease Control and the president said about something that could impact your house, right? Instead of taking a political crony, whether it's from Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, I don't care who it's
all
from.
of them do it.
All of them do it. Just go and watch it.
Freaking
just go and listen to a little bit of it yourself. It really got, I'm sorry, I'm ranting, but man, I was super frustrated with the dumb news reporting. That's why I was quoting BBC earlier, because they don't care anything about Trump.
Yeah. It's,
for the most part.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Finding unbiased information whenever it comes to...
Yeah, dude. The British boys are just trying to not get wrapped up in the Epsteinery.
Yeah.
That's what they're focused on.
Yeah, well, they... Yeah, whenever it comes to stuff like that, they just do a horrible job at covering it the way that it needs to be covered. And so it's hard to find coverage on stuff like this. Even that podcast that I listened to, the one that with the lawyers that I really like, I'm not going to say the name on it because I do think that podcast is a very valuable thing to have out there for free for people to listen to. There are different pod shows within that podcast, so there's a group of
more biased than others.
More, and one of the ones that I listened to on the coronavirus last week was it was the same type of thing, just super. And it's like,
here's a good example for you. So yesterday he I guess they went to the Senate and asked for $2.5 million in kind of like emergency funding, because they're needing to bring a couple of other specialists in, a little bit of research. $2.5 million in this type of global pandemic, nothing. Well, Chuck Schumer gets up and is like, this is ridiculous. This is nowhere near enough money. We need to be putting, $8.5 million or something like that. And you had a couple of other Republicans that were like, yeah, $2.5 million, this is enough. We need to be doing maybe $4 million. And, Trump says, fine. I mean, give me whatever you want. But I didn't come up with the $2.5 million. The Center for Disease Control asked for $2.5 million. Yeah. Like they're the specialists. They're the ones that we're all supposed to be listening to. They said, hey, we need $2.5 million. So I came and said, can we get $2.5 million for these guys? And then you guys want to go, Trump, you're a dummy. Yeah. And I feel for the guy in that moment. I'm like, he's literally doing his job at recommunicating. Yeah. And the center, the other thing is the Center for Disease Control is not like some big conservative group. I mean, they can get on their own little soapbox. I mean, the data they can put out can be just as manipulated, but I feel like in these types of situations, like those are people who are capable of setting down to the side political disagreements and, hey, we need to be finding an answer to this because this isn't going away.
Yeah.
This is not going anywhere. This is I was telling my kids last night, I was like, you'll be an old person going in for a COVID-19 shot, and you'll remember when this happened. This isn't going anywhere. This isn't a virus that we're eradicating. So
it's for sure.
I could go the whole time on how the nonsense of politicians in this right now. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, that what most people don't consider whenever you're listening to political jargon around some stuff like this is that, like, the science community is still, like, the vast majority of them are atheists. They are, so you're not dealing with, CDC for, of Baptist conservatives or something like that. It's scientists and it's people that, like, that's what they do. Not to say that there aren't, people of various faiths within the science community. And
there definitely are. And a lot of them, their story will be, hey, the deeper I dug, the further I went, the more I realized there's no way this is an accident. There had to be a creator. I did some research. This is where I landed. Yeah. And that's the truth. By and far, the reports that they put out, depending on whatever the topic is, whether it is, and I don't have this data right in front of me, but I remember reading through some, gun violence reports, and they were written in a way that they didn't account for suicide deaths. And that's a really important, like, if we really want to have a transparent, open, and honest conversation, we need to be talking about, all the data, but this isn't that. This is not like, one of those types of things. And this isn't because this is the death rate. This is because, and I was talking with you about this earlier, but, imagine being a family and there's 4 of you in the house, 6 of you in the house, maybe grandparents are living in the house and you all are sick at one time. Yeah. Who's taking care of who? Yeah. Typically one of us is sick in the house at a time, and you get a everybody kind of pitches in and helps. Or if you're a single person, you're not having to take care of anybody but yourself. Yeah. That changes when your whole household is sick. Because I can tell you right now, like, my 7-year-old, if he's got this, it doesn't matter if I've got it. I'm waking up every day and doing everything I can to make sure that my 7-year-old is breathing and being taken care of. Yeah. And that's the thing that's scary, is that could be happening to every house on the street, and then that's only the beginning. Like, then we get to the other side of that, and we're talking about, what could happen to the economy. And honestly, one thing that, and this is an extreme case, and I'm going to, if you're okay with me saying this, you can cut this out if you want. But kind of the extreme side of this, worst case scenario, is that this thing is multi-phase and the majority of the world gets sick simultaneously, and we end up with a food shortage on the back end, and we end up with a medicine shortage on the back end, and we end up with pockets of people turning to or resorting to crime, anarchy to get what they want. And it would not be the first time we've seen this happen. And right now, you go to Italy, you go to South Korea, you go to Japan, and where this virus is hitting, the shelves are empty. There's no food on the shelves in the grocery stores. It
doesn't even take that. I mean, you think about whenever a hurricane is even speculated to come in our direction here, it clears out completely.
Come on, you're from Louisiana.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean,
that was one pocket, but imagine an entire world facing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's 320 million people in this country. Like, there's,
that's a lot of ravioli.
if it came here and we had to, whatever you call it, not martial law, but
self-quarantine.
Self-quarantine. Like
2 weeks of everybody staying in their house and nothing being produced means no food on the shelves, means kids hungry, parents going crazy,
people not getting paid for whenever those stuff do get back on
Right.
the shelves.
and then you gotta ask the questions on, well, what's the government going to do? Are houses going to be foreclosed on? Is the power company going to kill power? Can the power company even maintain the power grid if nobody's at work? It's such a, this is the way I would like to put it, is that the odds of it are so slim. But if you're an atheist, life beat those odds.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if life can beat those odds, then death can beat those odds.
Yep.
And if you're a believer in some God, then, I would say that it'd be appropriate to be asking for guidance.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing.
I've
Actually done quite a bit of research, and we're at 57 minutes, but I've done quite a bit of research on what the CDC is recommending people do, who is recommending that people do, and what we're already seeing from people who are stuck in this thing wishing they had done. The primary thing, if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I want to be prepared, you should go and buy some fever reducers. Acetaminophen, Tylenol is a fever reducer.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got children, you want to get a child's version of it, and you want to get an adult version of it, and you want that in your house. It's more important than your mask.
Yeah,
it's more important than your mask. You want to do anything that you normally take that helps you breathe when you've got sinus congestion. You're going to want that too. Theraflu, Zicam. Do the research. Go to the drugstore. Pick up enough for your house. And that's one thing. Second thing you want to do is electrolytes. You want to make sure you've got stuff in there in case somebody gets the flu really bad and they're not able to eat. They're going to need electrolytes. So Gatorade's the cheapest way to do that, Powerade.
But there's also that one that's like for when you have a stomach bug or something.
Pedialyte.
Yeah.
That's more expensive. That was what I was about to say. It is more expensive.
But that stuff tastes nasty, but it works really
It's the best.
well.
It is the best. You need to get some of that. Then you need to think about, like, if I was not going to be able to get food for 2 weeks,
I mean,
what do I want in my house?
The thing I've been thinking about is like toothpaste, toilet paper, dog food. Is like things that you don't need them to survive, but also you're not going to want to be, not wiping.
And if you're already a nasty person, which we all know people who are, and there's probably some people, wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. Wash your hands, every time.
Be considerate, even if you don't care,
and wash them good. Don't just stick them under there,
dude. So
and if you're coughing,
you're supposed to wash
home.
them for. You're supposed to wash them for 2 minutes. Do you know how long that is?
2 minutes is a long time.
That is a long time to have your hands under running water.
But get these things, get some of this stuff into your house, and make sure you've got enough. And the other side of that too is like I don't know what the appropriate word is, but the good prepper is the person who doesn't just prep for themselves, but they prep for the people they care about, because too many times in an emergency, the people you care about don't have what they need, and you only got enough for yourself, and you're torn with a moral dilemma. And most of the time, good people are going to give away their resources, and then they're going to suffer.
And so everybody loses, really.
Everybody
in
loses.
Those situations.
So get a little extra.
Buy lots of gold.
Again, it is the far outlying side of this, but we just don't know enough to know what it's going to do. When you didn't jump into what do you call it? What do you call it? The shots you take to not get it? The
vaccine.
The vaccines.
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk about that?
You can. Yeah.
So, I said at the beginning that China did a good job. They have been doing a better job at being transparent, in what they're doing, and really, releasing information. Well, they sequenced the genetic code of COVID-19, and then they released that. And within 3 hours, we had a vaccine created. Now, the problem is, and they talked about this, and I would really encourage you to watch the I don't often like when we get presidential speeches and stuff. I'm not telling everybody to go watch those or be a part of them, but I would recommend go watch the one from last night. They did a good job. They explained that. So now that we have a number of vaccines that have been created, they are in an animal testing phase, and they're about to finish that phase, and then they have to wait 30 days to see if there's any lasting effects on the back end of it. Then they
like
begin
autism.
And then they start human trials, and that will move, at first, by the hundreds in trials, and then after that they move into the thousands, and then we are looking, best case scenario, we're looking at 14 months before we have a vaccine on the market. So that will be the fastest that the world has ever had a vaccine from creation to distribution. Yeah. It will have never happened faster. It's still a very long time, but it is a reality. And what we just don't know is how resilient this thing will be. And again, how many times can somebody get it, before their immune system says, I'm done with it. Now, there is, the other side of this is most people, don't get the hardcore flu out of it. Most people they just feel like they've got a bad cold. You're at home with a headache and a runny nose and a mild cough, and then you move on. So, I'm not really, I'm personally not like afraid of what's going to happen, but I do believe in being ready in case it is kind of on that, not the worst case scenario, but if it's in that kind of like, oh, this is bad, again, having stuff for my kids, having stuff for the people I care about. Yeah.
Yeah. So be prepared. Be prepared. I guess that's going to be about it for today. If there's anything else that y'all want to add at all, we got some other stuff, few other things that I wanted to kind of talk about, but today, this is really relevant for kind of the stuff that's going on. So next week we'll do some either some Roger Stone stuff or some updates on the Harvey Weinstein thing. We'll do some updates on the Epstein stuff. And
what's up with all the Steens,
I don't know, dude.
Out here being a PDF file,
Yeah.
And what about all the pictures of them together?
Yeah.
All right.
That's a lot of the stuff that we want to talk about kind of in the next couple weeks. But if y'all don't have anything else, we'll close out. If y'all want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Twitter. I am at TBAT Quinn. Skinny Rick.
Mine's at TBATSKINERICK. Skine Rick.
Skine Rick.
You're really missing out if you're not following me. I'm serious.
Yeah, you are.
And you can find me on
maybe at Target or something.
Yeah, like sometimes in Home Depot.
Yeah.
I don't ever. Twitter just makes me mad. So
Chick-fil-A. We all been eating a lot of Chick-fil-A. We're getting thick filet over here.
Thick filet, yeah.
Thick filet.
Jim Simpson 79 on Instagram, but I'm not going to talk about politics or preparedness. I'm going to talk about how awesome my family is. So that's what that's going to be.
6 count of thicky nuggets,
Yeah. So that'll be it for this week. Thank y'all for watching, and we will see y'all next time.
Deuces.
Kill everybody.